Hey everybody, Peter Elfman, Producer's Log. Today's date 202308.23. You'll figure it out. What are we talking about today? Couple of things. So I took a step or two back away from the Cymatic song I was working on, the contest song. Check out last videos to see the deets on that. There's a contest. Go sign up and join. Make a song. It's gonna be awesome. I put it up for some critique and I got a lot of really good, important feedback, and I'm frustrated because my current sound setup is not letting me hear the problems that everyone else is pointing out. I'm working blind, I'm working deaf, I'm working impaired, and it's frustrating me. So I had to kind of take a step back, get back to work on the audiobook that I'm working on for a little bit, which brings up one quick thing that I wanted to talk about. The importance of critique. A number of people think critique is talking about a piece, and bringing out all the things that they don't like about it. And that is not true. Critique is extremely important in the arts. If you're doing anything, it is important for you to get notes on whatever it is you're working on, assuming you're making something for public consumption. If you're just doing it for your own private fun, forget about it. But if you actually want something to be released in the public and enjoyed, it's important to get feedback on it. Critique is not criticism. Those are two very different things. Critique is constructive criticism. If you drop the constructive part out, then it's just bitching. It's just someone talking a lot of crap about your stuff. Or it's you talking crap about somebody's stuff. And that is never helpful. Now, I plan on doing a whole series on critiquing, but there are a couple of quick things I will drop right now. One, critique should never be about the person who created the piece. It should always be focused on the piece itself. If the note is directed personally, it will be taken personally, and that's unprofessional and it's unacceptable. So always focus on the piece itself. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention about that is critique is actually, there are two skills involved in critiquing: giving critique and receiving critique. Those are two different skills, and we all can learn them, and I think we all should. I have been through a number of groups and classes: writing, visual arts, music groups. If you're in a class, you will be given notes by your instructor. And if they're not giving you notes, then get a new instructor, because that is half the reason why you're paying that money to take a class in the first place. Notes are how you improve your work, and improving your work is how you improve your skills. So if you don't get notes, you can't improve. And so it's important to learn how to receive criticism and apply them to the work without too much emotional involvement. And I say too much because if you spend 3 hours with 5 people and it feels like they just spent the entire time dunking on your story or your piece of music or whatever it is, it's kind of hard to walk away from that and not feel like they were just beating up on your soul for a little bit. But if it's in a good environment and it's good critiques, if the notes are good and everything is given with respect to you and with the goal of helping you improve the piece, then once you get over the butt hurt, you'll have a lot of good notes to work with. It's important to learn how to receive critique. It is equally important to know how to give critique, because if you're in a situation where you're receiving critique, ideally you should be also reciprocating. This would be in a classroom scenario, or if you're in a group of some sort, like a Discord group. Shout out to Oscar's Underdog group. Yeah, so it's important to know how to give critique. And again, I have a whole thing planned for this, but in general, never criticize the creator. Always focus on the piece, and it's not about vomiting up everything you don't like. It's about finding the technical things that could be improved. Criticism can be subjective, but it's important to be as objective as possible. All right, this is running longer than I wanted to, so we're going to jump topics to the main topic. Your DAW is a magic gateway. A magic gateway to what? Well, I'm sure a lot of you did probably something similar. You made a choice to create music. You did your research, you talked to some people, and you came to the conclusion that you needed to get your hands on a digital audio workspace. And so through however means you could, no judgment, you got yourself a DAW. Here's the thing. DAW, D-A-W, does not stand for Digital Music Workstation. It stands for Digital Audio Workstation. There is a lot more you can do with a DAW than just make music. One quick example of that is sample packs. That is one way that a lot of producers make their cash. They create new sounds for their music, and then they bundle them up and release them for purchase by other people. All those sounds in those sample packs, all those samples are made in a DAW. Even if they're recorded elsewhere, ultimately they're processed through a DAW. If you've ever played a video game, watched a movie, watched a TV show, even if it isn't like science fiction or anything, all of those things have sound effects. Sound effects these days are created, if not processed, through a DAW. That sound design, and if you're into electronica or EDM of any sort, sound design is going to be one of the learning curves you're going to find yourself on. Sound design is not just about getting your synth to sound the way you want to. It's not about getting that cool bass growl or that cool synth arp. It's not just about carving out frequencies. It's about how to design a sound. And I mean, it sounds kind of obvious when I say it that way, but that sound doesn't have to be musical. So sound effects can be recorded and manipulated or created whole cloth using synthesizers. There's a whole lot of those you can use. You can combine multiple methods. I'm a fan of Warframe. Eric Preston is their sound designer, and there are some fantastic sound effects in that game. If any of you have ever seen a Star Wars thing, there are at this point a couple of 100 hours of Star Wars films and shows. You might have seen one. Ben Burtt designed the original sounds for the first 3 movies. And now, almost 40 years later, everyone in the world knows what a lightsaber sounds like, what a TIE fighter sounds like. And he was working analog, so he's got even more power at his hands now that the sound design has gone digital. That is all done in DAWs now. If the same things now, we're talking about video games, films, and movies. If you've ever heard voices that have been altered in any way, that's also done through a DAW. Gonna go back to my 80s kids. Transformers, the original show. Frank Welker famously voiced Soundwave, whose voice was run through a vocoder. You can recreate that sound now in a DAW pretty easily, provided you have a vocoder. And I'm working on audiobooks. Vocal processing for audiobooks is completely different from vocal processing for music. With an audiobook, you're not worried about carving out frequencies to make space for the vocal, but you are worried about things like the sound floor, because no one wants to hear when they're listening to their favorite audiobook. Mix-wise, audiobooks are a little easier. I only have to deal with 3 tracks, and only 2 of them are running simultaneously, and that's for maybe 10 seconds at a time. So levels are easy. Whole different ballpark from music production. Lastly, so I mentioned vocal processing, I mentioned sound effects. This whole channel is spawned by music production. You don't have to focus on one. I want to bring up Wangline, who's a producer, sound designer based out of Germany, and their output is prolific and amazingly good. Like, I will drop links, go watch their videos, go listen to their stuff. It is not fair how good all of their stuff is. They've got an indie game coming out called Vivid Air where they coded, I think, most of it. I don't know how much of they did code it, but they designed most of the game aspects of it. They designed all the sound effects. They wrote all the music for it. None of it sounds like Joe Schmo working on a Commodore 64. This is all, you know, of the quality you expect to see for a modern game. It's hard to believe one person did all of that well. And yet, that's exactly what's happening. So you don't need to necessarily focus on one thing, assuming you have the time and energy. It's a commitment, but if you can do it, freaking do it, because your stuff is going to be awesome. Next time you open up your DAW, consider where else it'll take you besides the land of music. That's it for now. Ran a little bit long. Apologies. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Don't take any shit from anybody. See you later.